paralyzed by the Moderna shot. In Canada, I was offered medical assistance in dying 3 times. Like they told me that's not because of Moderna. That's because Canada doesn't actually have free healthcare. We have no healthcare. And then they say, well, basically you're really expensive. We have no treatments for you, but we do have this, so there's a lot more going on than just, my fight against Moderna.
To August of last year, nobody really knew who I was.
There's about 12 people who are producing 65% of anti-vaccine misinformation.
We need to come together as Americans and realize that we have a war at hand here. Right?
Like, dude, how scared of this shit do you have to be to be wearing gloves, a face shield, a mask at this point?
Help us to urge folks and say to them, look, it's time to roll up your sleeve and get the shot.
Chiropractor in Omaha, Nebraska, responsible for 65% of the anti-vaccine misinformation. Put what I say to the test. Just don't write me off as crazy misinformation.
Doctor, please bring yourself in order.
600,000 people will die of cancer. 300,000 people will die of obesity this year. When is enough enough?
Okay, Kayla, how are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
Good. I am. I'm excited to be talking with you. I'm just very thankful you're willing to sit down with me and have a conversation. I just want people to know your story, your testimonial. I want to get your message out to my people. I think that we can band together. I mean, as Scripture says, a triple braided cord is much stronger together. And so I want to just hear your story. So tell a little bit, just to give us a 30-second synopsis of who you are, and just and basically why we're sitting down here, and just a little bit of your story.
Well, I guess I would just sort of describe myself as at the time of basically first and foremost, I'm a mother of a 10-year-old son. I would consider myself to have a pretty normal life. I worked at first I worked with exotic animals, and then I ended up working with kindergarten children. Quite a switch there, I know. And then I was just sort of a normal, almost kind of middle of the road, just not really, just sort of a normal person who ended up in a situation where I felt that I really needed to go public with what happened, because if I didn't know, then I realized that a lot of other people wouldn't know what I didn't know. And I didn't want this to happen to other people, or I felt people needed to be informed of risks. So I guess that's a short sort of synopsis of like why I'm sitting down and talking to you today.
Okay, so let's back up. So basically, just to be blunt, you had a COVID vaccine.
Yeah.
You were healthy prior.
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
Okay, and then walk us through that. So you had you were healthy. You were living life.
So yeah, I was type 1 diabetic, but the basically all of the world, the Health Organization, and all these places and the news and everyone during the COVID-19 pandemic, they were saying that if you were diabetic specifically, then you were definitely going to die of COVID, and it was coming for you. And they specifically mentioned diabetes like over and over and over. I worked in the kindergarten class. I had a father dying in long-term care. In order to go see him, you had to be vaccinated. He did die in long-term care, so I don't regret being able to see him at all and being there for my mother. But regardless, yeah, I had a COVID vaccine. I had some symptoms right after, and then I went hiking one day in the daytime. Went to bed that night. Didn't have any falls. It was just normal hike with the dog, anything like that. And I woke up in the morning and I was literally paralyzed from the neck down.
Oh my goodness.
And yeah.
How soon? What was the time frame by the time you had the vaccine? And it was you had a Moderna.
I
vaccine.
did have a Moderna. I can't discuss the time frames only because I have a $45 million lawsuit against them.
Okay.
So, I don't discuss time frames, only because, God forbid I mess up a date or something. They'll use that against me. They're going to look for anything. The point of me doing this podcast is basically, to just, basically, to do it anyway. I want to, it's risky, but at the same time, I still need to get my story out there.
Absolutely.
And your audience should hear my story because, anybody should hear it, just random normal people. So I'm sorry, I've got two crazy Savannah cats. Like I said, I used to work with exotic animals, and they're a little bit wild in the background, so your audience may get a bit distracted there.
That's okay. This is life. This is real life, and that's okay. We don't need to have this. This isn't a high-end production podcast, so that's okay. We are we are just trying to get the story out.
Yeah.
And that's
so sorry about that.
No, that's okay. So the bottom line is we had an injury. I mean,
yeah.
You're suing Moderna, which I pray you have victory over this lawsuit. You're suing them for $45 million because in February of 22nd of 2024, you filed a lawsuit.
Yeah.
And so basically this is, there's no injury there of any kind of during the hike or anything. There's nothing there besides the vaccine. And so,
and it was explained. Yeah. So basically what it ended up being is transverse myelitis. So what it is it's an autoimmune disorder that, an autoimmune reaction.
Right.
That essentially attacked my spinal cord and caused such inflammation inside my spinal cord that it cut off the signals, basically almost as if somebody breaks their back. Let's say an incomplete fracture to someone's spine, or neck or spine, and it breaks off the signals that travel, from the brain to the body. So, your brain says, breathe or move those muscles or roll over in bed at night, and your body does those things automatically. Or your brain says, just walk, and it does those things without you really thinking about it. And I can think about it all I want and I don't move, but I can feel everything. So I have pain, I just can't move. And I woke up quadriplegic. I knew when I woke up that I was quadriplegic. When 911 came, I told them, I woke up, I'm quadriplegic. It must have sounded crazy. They didn't not believe. 911 was good. They put me out on a backboard and did the things they should have. Took me to the hospital, and the doctor's diagnosis was that I needed a psych consult. That was the diagnosis before any MRIs or any tests, except they gave me a COVID test, of course. A COVID swab was a test I got. And then I was tested for drugs and alcohol. So when all that came back clear, all of a sudden I started getting this, I had no pain at the time. And then all of a sudden, after sitting in the hospital for a couple hours, I started getting this excruciating neck pain. And with the neck pain, all of a sudden they're giving me high doses of morphine, and I'm going, you don't give morphine to a psych patient. You might give them a sedative, but you wouldn't be giving them morphine. Mm-hmm. That makes no sense. So this doctor knows. And then I had another doctor come and whisper and kind of say, you need an MRI. I don't think this is in your head. I think there's something wrong with you. And that's when we had to rule out cancer. We had to rule out MS. Essentially, we had to rule out infection. We had to rule out any other cause other than the vaccine to make sure that that's what it was. But it is a vaccine reaction. It's not. I'm not the first person that's ever had this as a vaccine reaction.
Right. And if you were to look at every package insert of almost every single vaccine on the market, you'll see transverse myelitis as an adverse reaction. And
Right.
so, it's criminal. People, I can't tell you how many times I've seen this, even Guillain-Barré, transverse myelitis, a lot of these encephalitis or inflammatory conditions in the spine and nervous system occur after post-vaccination. This is a real thing, and it does happen. And so what I want to highlight too is the fact that when you have this, and I'm so sorry this occurred, Kayla, and I do believe in the power of healing. I believe in the power of prayer, but I just, we are up against evil entities of the world here. And, when you look at your story, now that censorship's a real thing. You've been gaslit by the medical community. You've been persecuted by the medical community. You've been, it's like this whole vaccination is like a religion. So, walk us through of what you've experienced from the gaslighting in the medical community, and in just getting your story out there. You're not going to hear your story in the mainstream, unfortunately.
Well, I mean, I think it started from day one. Like I said, day one of this, of this incident where, I go to the hospital February 22nd of 2022. I go to the hospital, I'm completely quadriplegic, and the first thing the doctor says, he does a couple of reflex tests, and any doctor that's in the emerge should know that even if you have a break in your spinal cord, you can have an incomplete break and still have some reflexes. So he did some reflex tests, and I guess I had a few reflexes, and he then decided that I was faking, and that he then decided that I needed a psych evaluation. I knew it wasn't in my head because I knew when the symptoms had started. I knew what this was. I even said this was from my vaccine, and of course I think that's what really started this whole thing on the wrong foot. When something happens right after a vaccination, you just know what's going. I knew a lot of medical knowledge, and so I knew what it was. I thought I had Guillain-Barré because it's a more common side effect, but it usually happens more very immediately. And so I wasn't 100% sure. I knew it wasn't an injury. And I think that's when the censorship started, is right with that doctor. And then the fact that he's giving you morphine for pain, that's just not a typical psychiatric thing that you would do. In fact, you would not give morphine to a psych patient. So I think the absolute censorship of that doctor was the start of it. And then moving on from just doctors, I guess the real start of it was the fact that our whole entire world was basically set on fire, where I'm being told by the World Health Organization used to be the standard in where I would turn for medical knowledge. I did that. The CDC, I'm Canadian, the CDC, I get, what is it for you guys? It would be the, what's your equivalent of the CDC?
Well, we have the CDC here in the States.
Okay.
Yeah, so we do have the CDC.
It is, okay. So all of these places that, you would turn normally, and then I didn't know about media influence and that media was so corrupt. I had no idea. I wasn't a politician. I didn't know all of this. That was not my world. My world was, like I said, I worked with exotic animals like lions, monkeys, parrots. And then I ended up having to stop that job because it's dangerous. I had a son, and I ended up going with kindergarten children, which was more dangerous. But, and I think the censorship, the issue around even just the media not telling us what was really going on, or maybe let's just pretend they didn't know. The fact is that after this happened to me, I would post a video or something, and it would immediately be called misinformation. And I'm like, how is what I'm saying about what happened to me and a doctor diagnosing me in the end a neurologist saying it was a vaccine injury. How is that misinformation?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't understand, because they haven't read my medical reports. They haven't seen any of it. Like, how did they know what happened to me? So, like, I would post on Facebook and it would go. I would post on Instagram, it would go. I'd post on YouTube, it would go. Even on X at times, it would go. And I was like, okay, so there's no way to tell my story. And then, you said this is something the mainstream media would never touch. Well, ironically enough, recently, July 4th, my story did come out on mainstream media here in Canada. It went on something called Global News National. So it was a national headline, and it was about our vaccine injury compensation program in Canada. And surprise, surprise, the whole program ended up being a scam. They had whistleblowers basically that worked inside the program, and the program, there was a lot of high school students running the program, and they said they had drinking Fridays, and they had bring your dog to work days, which that part's fine, I don't care. They had ping pong tables, and there was a lot of Netflix, and that our files, they even said, like, they were just treated as not people, but just papers. And so we get this information from an employee of the vaccine injury compensation program. It's 3 years for me that I'm sitting in limbo. And so the story comes out on national headline. I'm literally, focused, the focused story. And I go to post it on Facebook or Instagram, and it's immediately taken down because we have a media ban here. So I can't post it, my mainstream media, on Facebook or Instagram, and I can't post whatever we call non-mainstream media, like independent media, on my Facebook or Instagram. So basically, it doesn't matter whether you're left, right, or censored politically, you just don't get to hear my story. That's how censored it is.
Criminal. It makes my blood boil.
I can't believe it.
It's evil.
I had no idea. I don't know if I was just, I just don't think people, if I didn't know, and I've considered myself pretty educated. I mean, even my politics marks in school were really good marks, but I wasn't into the whole realm of knowing how corrupt things were. Or maybe I was just too involved living my life to want to be involved in this world. Because ultimately, if I could go back and not know, ignorance was bliss.
Right. Again, George Martin stated, when you cut out a man's tongue, you don't prove him a liar, but you're fearful of what he has to say. I mean, they're terrified of what your story, and stories move people. And so this is why, again, they know the power of your testimony, and this is why they censor it. And, I've seen this over and over and over. We had a lady, Angelita, in our documentary early on. She was a nurse. She had a vaccine. She was having like these tremors, and she had some transverse myelitis going on, and she was having difficulty walking and all these other issues. And they did the same thing. They try to say she's got anxiety or this is psychiatric, and it's just like, you got to be kidding me. They want to address everything but the elephant in the room. And it's this vaccine injury. And vaccine injury is more common. It's not rare. It's more common than what people know about or what we're led to believe, as you know. So I want to know, did you just have one COVID vaccine? Did you have multiple?
I had one booster.
Okay, so did you have the vaccine and the booster, or just one booster?
I had the vaccine and then the booster.
Okay, so what was your take on vaccines prior? Did you just
believe? Clearly, no, I'm not I mean, people always say, well, you're an anti-vaxxer. And I said, I took the vaccine. Like, that doesn't even make sense to me when people say that. So I didn't know. I knew there were risks. Like, I did know that, for instance, even Guillain-Barré or Bell's palsy, like, I knew about those two things. But at the same time, Guillain-Barré has a much better prognosis than what I have right now. Transverse myelitis, you even at least have a 1 in 3 chance of basically getting some recovery. I'm stuck quadriplegic in a wheelchair for the rest of my life, but most people are able to have some recovery, like 2 out of 3 people. So I didn't know what transverse myelitis was prior to the vaccine. I had no idea. And, we didn't know, we weren't told that, like for instance, Moderna had never produced human products or things like that. Like how would I know that? Because everything that people say, well, the information was there. Well, everything was censored. So if it was there, it was always being taken down. So let's say that you had posted telling me all this stuff, that they would have taken it down. Maybe you did post. I don't know. But do you know what I'm saying? Like back in 2022, if you posted that, Moderna was, had this in it or was, these were risks, that would have immediately been taken down.
Yeah, right.
And how would I find it? Like, I don't know. I don't know how I would have been able to find that.
Right. And it's criminal because at this point, it's a religion. And it's like, when you try to post things, I remember, I was censored early on in 2020.
Okay.
I was posting about vitamin D and the common denominator. In fact, I did a health talk in 2019 in the fall. I said, listen, something big is coming our way. We had legislation to come after our rights and freedoms to refuse a vaccination in 2019. With Event 201 in 2019, which was a dress rehearsal for the pandemic, and we said something big is coming our way. And then 2020, the pandemic hit, we were trying to raise awareness, and I was censored, deplatformed early on. I just uploaded my speech from 2019, and I was banned on Facebook for 60 days. And
yeah, I think I refer to it as like, I've been put in X jail or, things like that. It's like, oh, I can't talk to you right now. I'll text a friend and say, can't talk to anyone right now. I'm in Facebook jail, or I'm in,
right.
It's stupid, but it's also, it's not just stupid. It's literally criminal. Evil. Because how do you get, like, we don't have freedom of speech in either of our countries. I'm sorry.
Right. That's exactly right.
I mean, that's besides that Moderna thing. That has nothing to do with Moderna's, like, I'm not blaming Moderna for the fact that Canada doesn't have free speech. I blame our government for that. Right. But we don't have free speech. I mean, if I can't freely give my opinion online in any way, shape, or form, that isn't going to be, I mean, even this video that we're doing, it's going to be in some way censored to a certain degree. There's going to be certain people led to it, certain people led away from it. Yep. There's going to be, I can't post the link on Facebook. I can't post the link on Instagram. We could maybe post the link on X, but even then, when I go to post my website, it won't let me post half the time. So, I mean, like, there's no free speech. I literally just put a sign, I know this sounds really crazy, a small, like, almost like an election looking sign in my front yard that sort of gives a scan code of where you can get my website, like a QR code with my website. And it just says, paralyzed by the Moderna shot. And in Canada, I was offered medical assistance in dying 3 times. Like, they told me that's not because of Moderna. That's because Canada doesn't actually have free healthcare. We have no healthcare. And then they say, well, basically, you're really expensive. We have no treatments for you, but we do have this, so there's a lot more going on than just, my fight against Moderna. There's also that, like, things like, offering me medical assistance in dying. I mean, I become an advocate for, like, massive cracks, or maybe not even cracks is a good word, like, just like craters in our healthcare system. And, I mean, you guys too. I mean, I live in Ontario, a province where we put more tax dollars than any other province. We pay more tax dollars, and we have less money than any other province in our healthcare system. So it's criminal in many different aspects. And then you can't talk about it, so you can't get support. And then you're led, like I'm led to live without care, and then they want you to pay for having somebody to come to your house, but I can't work, so I'm relying on donations. And I know a lot of people that speak out are relying on donations and have lost their jobs. And I mean, I know a lot of people that refused the vaccines have lost their jobs, or even businesses that had nothing to do with refusing vaccines or not refusing vaccines lost their businesses. Like I know, people are sometimes they say, how are people still interested in talking about COVID? Like, how do you get all these interviews? And I'm like, people in a certain realm are very interested in what went wrong.
100%.
They're very affected, and people are sometimes shocked that, like, I'll be like, oh, I got 2 podcasts today, or I've got, something in Sweden today. And they're like, what? How are you getting all these? And I'm like, they call me and they find me, and they're like, but why are people still talking about it? And I'm like, because it really impacted a large percentage of the globe.
Right. And plus we care,
Yeah.
and not only that, it's, I like to think that we are fighting for people like you. We are speaking for people like you, giving you a voice and getting your story out to the people, because it matters. I'm also in lawsuits against basically TNI, which is the Trust News Initiative, and we're in lawsuits against the government and the FBI for collusion and censorship. It's evil. Freedom of speech is a valuable freedom. It is we don't value it till it's gone. And
Yeah.
and like you said, we should have the freedom of speech is a God-given freedom. It is a God-given right to be able to speak the truth. You might not agree with what I say, but we have the freedoms to say it anyway. That's the beauty of freedom of speech.
Right.
And and if that freedom is gone, then deaf, dumb, and silent will be led like sheep to slaughter. And it's something that we have to value, and this is why it's so important that we get your story out and other people's stories like this out, because government censorship should not occur. And like you said, there was so much. It doesn't matter if you like your story is valid. You have your testimonial, and nobody can take that away from you. And it's like you get that out there, and social media was like, oh, it's misinformation. I mean, that's evil. It's complete evil. And I can't tell you how many people I saw that happen.
Oh yeah, that's not just me.
Right. So I want to go into a little bit. I know we're limited on what we can talk about and what we can say about the lawsuit. Has there been progress made in the lawsuit?
Well, yeah, a lot of people say, well, you can't sue the vaccine companies. They have immunity. Well, in Canada, they didn't get the blanket sort of immunity that they did put in other countries, such as the U.S. What they did, without telling us, basically, is they gave the vaccine companies sort of a type of immunity. So I sue Moderna for $45 million. I win my lawsuit. Moderna pays me, and Canadian taxpayer money pays Moderna. So ultimately, I mean, when I tell people this, every single person I've ever said that to said, well, I'd rather my tax money go to supporting someone like you. But that's not the point. I get angry when I hear that, because I think, so basically, yeah, Moderna's name gets trashed, but, and I get that, but what happens is our taxpayer money pays that. I mean, I guess it's better than what happened in the States, for instance, where you guys can't sue them, because then they're not held liable at all. Like, liability to me is not just financial. It's my product caused an injury to this person, and this person is going to be told, like, a court is going to decide, like in my case, a jury will decide, in my hometown, will decide whether or not Moderna was guilty of the things that are in my lawsuit, which is, negligence, and they didn't disclose, everything. And you know what? It has moved forward. So normally the first thing you do in a lawsuit when you want to get rid of it is you motion to just dismiss it, because if they had immunity, then they would just say, well, we have immunity and you can't file a lawsuit. So that didn't happen. So we're in the disclosure stages. Any day, like within today or Monday, I believe it is, I should have their, I guess it would be their, basically their, I guess all the blacked out sections that no one's ever seen about the Moderna vaccine. There's, Pfizer and AstraZeneca and everyone else has had to produce their documents, and basically there's a few blacked out parts on all those documents. I've seen them, but Moderna's never had to produce, to uncensor their blacked out sections, and there's so much of it that nobody's ever seen, and it's particularly with Moderna that it really scares you, especially when you compare it to other vaccine companies that, even if you look at AstraZeneca went down because, remember, the first reason that they froze AstraZeneca was for a case of transverse myelitis.
Right.
That's the first reason that it was originally halted at first. Then they put it back on the market, and then they took it off of the market. So that's a different vaccine, but it's an example of they didn't even have everything blacked out the way that Moderna does. Pfizer didn't even have everything blacked out the way that Moderna does. So what the hell did I take?
Right.
And this could have been anybody. And no, people ask me all the time, I hope you weren't one of those people that were going around telling everyone to put their masks on. I have a lot of friends that are quite religious, and they believed what they would tell me. I believe that God knows exactly what day I'm going to die. And so I have no reason to put a mask on. And I would have debates with them. I would actually, in my house, without masks, I would just say, well, does that mean that you shouldn't wear your seatbelt? Or does that mean, I didn't know at the time. So I was just asking, I would just want to know. When I have questions, I ask them. It's the only way that I can have a healthy conversation with a friend and not agree with them or agree with them. Or maybe they changed my mind. So I would ask questions like that, and I had this one friend in particular, and her and I would talk about that, and I still had her at my house, even though our premier was having people arrested for having people over. So no, I wasn't one of those people running around telling everyone to put a mask on. That being said, I was going to work, and I was having to wear full PPE gear, basically I was having to wear a mask and goggles and a shield and hand sanitize all the little kindergarten children, which made no sense because they were wearing their masks. Then they were someone would go, let's say Susie would say, oh, Sally, I love your rainbow mask. And she'd say, I love your kitty cat mask. Let's switch. And they'd just switch masks. So I'm kind of sitting there going, well, this is quite comical because look at us looking like Darth Vader to these new kindergarten kids that just came into school. They've never been to school before, and we're showing up like astronauts or something, or like E.T. looking, it's like in the movie E.T. when they're all in the spacesuits scaring the crap out of little kids. And I'm thinking, we kind of look really scary. And, I'm working with kids with autism and stuff like this, and, it seems really sort of redundant, I guess is the word. And then they're putting their masks on the floor, and then you're being told, you're being mandated that you have to make sure they have their masks on. So you would have to say, okay, well, you're going to have to go to the office and get a new mask. And then the office would run out of masks. And it was just that when you look back at it, and, they say hindsight is 20/20. Well, I think it's more than 20/20 in some cases. You look back, and I look back and I go, I can't believe how stupid I was for believing all of this, and I guess I didn't know.
It's crimes against humanity.
I didn't know.
And you're not alone, Kayla. So many
No,
people.
I had to look at, I literally had to start reading a lot of books about the Holocaust and about how did like a bunch of people in Germany, for instance, decide that they were going to actually be
Comply.
so against Jewish people that they were gonna, most of them wouldn't hide a Jewish person. They would literally, become Nazis or become. How did that happen? So I'd look at the psychology behind like how did this whole thing even happen? And how did one guy decide, I don't like Jewish people, I want to wipe them off the face of the planet? And this started to, sweep over. I had to look at that and talk to people whose parents were in the Holocaust and to understand it. And the one question I would ask is, I said to one man, I said, I'm sorry about if this is an inappropriate question. I said, please feel free to stop me or not answer, because he was very open about his story, about his dad being in a concentration camp. And he said, I said, do you ever feel empathy towards the people that were German? And he goes, I didn't. I used to hate them. And he says, but yeah, I absolutely do. He said, I absolutely do, because they were brainwashed too. Like they were, and people think that people are also very extreme for comparing COVID, but I have a lot of friends that come from. I have one friend that's been here, and she came from Iran, and she says things like, I'm starting to see in Canada a lot of the big red flags that happened during our difficult times being from Iran. And I have other friends, or I talk to people. I have to take almost like a taxi company in a wheelchair in order to go to an appointment, and it's once a week, and the drivers are often immigrants, and I talk to them and they'll say, I'll ask, like, what do you think of Canada? How long have you been here? And they say, I used to think it was wonderful here, but I mean, might as well go back to my own country, because it's starting to become, scary. And when I hear that from people that are from like third world countries, let's say, I start to get really scared about, what are we getting into? And
right.
It's very worrisome, because people always think we're immune from another war, or we're immune from another pandemic, or we're immune from, and we're not.
Well, let's call it for what it is. I mean, this was a tyrannical globalist agenda pandemic. Make no mistake. I mean, there was manipulation of data. There was massive lies, deception, censorship, and that's the problem. It's censorship is evil. God hates lying. He hates deception, and that's what this is. This was a giant globalist agenda. I mean, we are getting funneled into the Agenda 2030. Make no mistake. This is a power grab. Klaus Schwab even said that COVID was a test run for the compliance to see how many people would comply to this whole thing. I think of the quote, Martin E. Moyler, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but he said, first they came for the socialist, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionist, but I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. We are in that time. The soil for truth is rich. The soil for revival is rich. We have a dictatorship knocking at our doorstep. And this is why we need to be continuing this talk, Kayla, because what we saw was not just a pandemic. This was government overreach. And like you said, we are at a time when we could have communism at our door tomorrow. And if we stay quiet and compliant. And, we need to fight for injustice. I'm going to give you the last word here on where people can find you, how we can support you, and where people can donate.
So I'm most active probably on X, or formerly Twitter, which is my handle there is at KCPOLLOCK. And then I've got a website, which is where people can donate. And that's www.opkayla.ca. And then if you hit /donate, it goes right to the donation page. You can donate from anywhere in the world. There's e-transfer, there's credit card, there's PayPal, there's all sorts of different ways that you can donate. It goes into a corporation, so the money can't be spent on anything other than assistance that's medical. So it's not like I get my hair done with that money or something, which is the corporation is run by a group of veterans that are anonymous. I guess they're not anonymous if you go on and look at the corporation documents, but they're not getting public attention for this or anything. It was formerly run by Veterans for Freedom, but I passed it along to a different group of veterans, and it's being run, and they don't get any public recognition for it or anything like that. The only way that I support myself is through people like you just allowing me to tell my story, and allowing me to agree to disagree with you might not think all of my words are factual. I might not agree with all of your opinions or the next host's opinions, but you're allowing me to tell my truth, and I just appreciate that, and that you have viewers that you think want to hear my truth, and that are going to want to pass my truth on, and I appreciate that a lot. I believe that I do believe that God basically left me with my voice, because he knew I was already a pretty big public speaker. I had spoken in front of crowds of 19,000 people. That's a pretty big crowd. I'm not afraid to say what I think in a gentle way. I'm not confrontational, but I'm not afraid. So I do believe that that's why this might have been me, and that my purpose is to show my son that that we stand up for truth and for our freedom of speech, and for what's wrong. You can't just look the other way. And it's been helpful for him because he doesn't look the other way with injustices at school, and things like that, and his teachers have noted it and stuff. So it's done a lot of good for my son as far as teaching him hard lessons in life, but it's also been really traumatic for our family. I lost my home, I lost my job, I even had to give my son to his dad. It's been hell. It's been really awful, and I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to speak to your audience.
God bless you, Kayla. We'll be praying for you. We'll be praying for a miracle, for healing. I do believe in that. I believe, God's word to be true, a living, breathing document. I believe in Christ, and I encourage you to lean into him. His word says that he makes our burdens light. His yoke is easy. And in heaven, you will get a new body. If he doesn't cure you here, which I believe he can, if that's his will, I pray that that's the case. But you will get a new body in heaven, and you will be walking on two legs there for sure if you put your faith in Christ. But Dietrich Bonhoeffer stated, we are not to simply bandage the wounds of victims beneath the wheels of injustice, but we are to drive a spoke into the wheel itself. I pray you have victory in your lawsuit here, Kayla, and I pray that people donate to your cause, your case, to help you. And just let you know, we stand behind you, we support you, and I pray that you have encouragement here. Kayla, thank you for your time. We'll be sharing this, and I pray if you're listening to this, share this story far and wide. Help Kayla out. Go to opkayla.ca, not .com, but .ca. Operation Kayla. We stand behind you. Thank you for your time, Kayla.
Thanks.
Yes.
To August of last year, nobody really knew who I was.
There's about 12 people who are producing 65% of anti-vaccine misinformation.
We need to come together as Americans and realize that we have a war at hand here. Right.
Like, dude, how scared of this shit do you have to be wearing gloves, a face shield, a mask at this point?
Help us to urge folks and say to them, look, it's time to roll up your sleeve and get the shot.
Chiropractor in Omaha, Nebraska, responsible for 65% of the anti-vaccine misinformation. Put what I say to the test. Just don't write me off as crazy misinformation.
Doctor, please bring your cell phone over.
600,000 people will die of cancer. 300,000 people will die of obesity this year. When is enough enough?